we really get into anything, are there any questions from the previous weeks? Okay, then. I'm going to post a link here to the Google Drive where I have all of the outlines, because today's this one is question and answer customization, and this one has some, as we'll see in a little bit, some real more detailed instructions on how to do things, and it's be a lot easier if you had some kind of paper to look at. I also have a link to a Qualtrics help page that goes into a lot more detail, because it's actually a very useful feature in Qualtrics. So today we are going to look at what I call question and answer customization. We're going to look at something called carry forward, where you can take people's responses and use them in subsequent questions. And we'll also be spending some time on something called piping, which is where you can take other information from previous questions and many other places within Qualtrics to display and do things for your respondents. And the things that we'll be looking at in piping will come back later on when we do survey flow. So it's good to have a nice little introduction to that kind of thing. So carry forward is, as I mentioned, good when you want to give people a bunch of choices, as we have here. Pick your 3 favorite ice cream flavors. So people will pick 3 of these. And then you want to further, depending on what they choose, have more my train of thought just went right over the cliff. To further question them about those choices. So as I say, we have your 3 favorite ice cream, and then I ask, of those, which are your most favorite? So I'll click and highlight that question, and then carry forward is over here on the left. You click on that, and you get one of these nice dialog boxes, and you can carry forward from anything that's obviously previous. Now can be a little confusing because you can't carry forward from something you haven't answered yet. But this is just one of those quirks of Qualtrics. So at this point, we have to pick question 1, which is what we want to do anyhow. And then you have your choice. All choices displayed and hidden, displayed choices, not displayed choices, selected choices, or the choices they did not select. Typically, you're at least going to start with selected choices. And then confirm. And you can see it automatically populates down here all of the choices from up here. But let's take a look at what happens when we actually go to try that. So we'll click on preview. And we'll say vanilla, chocolate, and caribou slobber, which is actually a craft beer. And so you can see it just picked from the selections the respondent made. we'll get to these other ones in a few minutes. And so we'll do this one, and instead this time we'll say unselected choices. Vanilla, chocolate, and ghost pepper this time. So we picked the first three, and then caribou, slobber, and strawberry we did not pick. So here we have these. And these were the unselected, vanilla and ghost pepper. Now, something you can do as well is carry forward from a carry forward. So you can keep going through. So we're going to do question 2, selected choices. Say vanilla, chocolate, ghost pepper. And so we only picked one because it was a radio button instead of a checkbox. But you get the idea. You can keep filtering down. So this can be pretty useful when you have to give people a lot of choices and you want them to narrow it down to something a bit more manageable. Of course, there's only 5 here, so it's not a big deal. But if you had 20 flavors, or in some other situation where you wanted people to pick out of a few and then say, why did you pick those? Are there any questions about carry forward? Yeah, it's a pretty neat little thing. It's pretty simple, and of course, you have all the different choices. Displayed or not displayed, we're going to do display logic next week, so that will make a bit more sense. Of course, it's whether or not any of these are displayed to the respondent, and we'll see how that works next week, because the display logic and the skip logic work the same. Okay, any questions? Awesome. What we're going to talk about next is called piping. And this is a way of gathering information from your respondents and then either displaying it back to them or doing some kind of operation with that and displaying it back to them. So here we have a question: what is your height? What is your weight? And what we want to do is, in the next question, display their height, their weight, and what their BMI is. So to do this, we can start here. Now you can do the pipe text here. And also in the rich content editor, and you'll see this icon, this little A in the curly brackets that says insert pipe text. You'll see this in various places in Qualtrics. And it's all the same kind of information, or choices rather. So let's go here. You can pipe information from a previous question. And we'll go through a lot of these in a minute. You can pipe from an embedded data field, and that is something that you set in the survey flow, which is something we'll be doing in a couple of weeks. And creating embedded data fields is very much like the piped text in many respects. There is some default recipient first name, panel ID. These aren't used. Well, the recipient stuff is, but the others perhaps not as much. GeoIP location. This is based on the IP address from which the respondent is responding. So if they're sitting in their office, it's the city their IP address is associated with. If they're home, it's the IP address their home city is associated with. And that can be kind of weird, especially if somebody is using a mobile device. With the IP, if it's a desktop kind of thing or a laptop, it will be whatever that IP address is registered as. Whereas with a mobile phone, it will be wherever they happen to be when they are answering the survey. If you want to know where somebody lives, you should specifically ask them. Don't rely on this because, as I say, it depends on where they are at the moment. Various survey links, the link to this survey, a custom one, the URL. Session ID might be useful for some programming things. And the opt-out link is just an unsubscribe. And that's really only useful if you're distributing using a directory. You can put in date and time, all different kinds of formats, and I'll even do the math for next year, next month, etc. And you have all the different formats for those as well. Opt-out link we just looked at, that's in survey links. It's the same thing. You can do random numbers, which sometimes can be useful if you just want to give some, say you're doing some kind of a raffle and you just want to give people a random number. One thing you should know is that this random number is randomized for each and every respondent. So I come in and answer this survey, I get a random number. Somebody else comes in and answers, they get a random number. It's unlikely, but entirely possible that two people get the same random number. So you need to set your min and max pretty high to avoid that. You can do integer numbers, decimals, and true false. It just goes 0, 1, 0, 1 randomly for each respondent. Get information. We saw this up above. A few of those when we did the embedded data field. Come on, close up. There we go. Thank you. You will see in Qualtrics, sometimes they call it a panel. Sometimes they call it a contact list. And sometimes they call it a directory. Directory is the current term for it. They're all the same thing. It's just that the panels and the contact list um, are legacy kind of things, and they, for whatever reason, I think it's, like in this, they probably just didn't bother to change it. But as I say, panels, contact list, and directory are all the same thing. Loop and merge, I think we'll be talking about next week. It's a way of asking the same set of questions repeatedly. So let's say you're doing research on families and you ask a parent, how many children do you have? And they say 3. And you want to ask the same set of questions about each of those 3 children. That's where loop and merge comes in. And we'll see this more next week when we do the loop and merge, but you can see what loop they're on and how many loops total there might be. There's various things that you can do with that. And then quotas is a way of limiting how many people in different groups you want to have answer your survey. So let's say you want to split your survey up, 100 students, 100 faculty, and 100 staff. That's where you could use the quota so that when the 101st student comes in, they'll be told, thank you very much, we already have all the students we need. And then they'll be kicked out of the survey. Well, you can get information on the quota, to see how far along you are. So those are all the neat things that you can display to your respondents. So we're going to come up here. We're going to do survey question. Come down, you can see you have various options for what gets displayed. So we're going to go to what's your height? And there's question text and what is your height? Question text is exactly that, the text of the question. What is your height? The second one is what they actually type into the box. And that's typically the one that you want. So we'll select that. And you see it puts this weird, funky code in there. And then we'll do the same for weight. Oh, want this one down here. Okay, so just for fun, let's take a look at that real quick. Just click through all of these. Just put in. And see how it displays that answer back. Now, what's really cool is you can use these codes to manipulate the information. You can do math with these. And there's all kinds of other things. And that link that I put into the chat has more detail on the kinds of things, math operations and whatnot that you can do with these. Now, the thing is, when you do this kind of manipulation, and we'll see it even more when we do survey flow, I highly recommend doing it in a plain text editor, whether it's Notepad or a Google Sheet or something, because it's a lot easier to edit. because things can get a little tricky with this. So I'm going to open up a blank and then I can copy and paste each of these in. Now, to change this into something that Qualtrics can interpret as a mathematical equation, you need to do a little bit of, or actually a bit of editing with this. First is you take out these dollar signs. And you take out curly braces. We're actually going to be putting curly braces back in, but for now it's easier just to have them out. To start the equation, you do $E and then a curly brace. Then you want one space. Qualtrics is really picky about spacing, and it wants one space between each element. So now we can copy and paste this here. I'm just going to hit publish just to make sure it all goes through. And you see it added the two. I'm going to go back and mess this up on purpose, just so you can see what happens. Depending on what error you make, it will either just print what's there, or it will say something like invalid expression. So you can see, if it says invalid expression, that means if you look at this, it looks like it's correct, but there's actually one extra space there. I think there's just one. There were two. There we go. See, so like most computer errors, it doesn't tell you what's wrong. And it was nothing more than an extra space in here. So as I say, Qualtrics is really, really picky about that. And so you can even get much fancier with this. See, and on that in that Qualtrics help page that I put in and is in today's outline as well. There's many more functions and things that you can do with this. And all of those work again in Survey Flow, which sometimes is where you need to do it. One thing about doing it this way is that this information is displayed to your respondent, and that's it. This BMI will not be included in your data. When you go to download your data, you will have height and weight because you asked it up here, but BMI will not be there. In this instance, that's not such a big deal because you can just calculate it in SPSS or Excel. And most times that would be the case anyhow. But once they continue on with the survey, their BMI disappears. So if you need BMI further on in the survey, they're either going to have to do this again, but it would probably be better off to calculate it in the survey flow, which, as I say, we're going to look at next week. And now let's take a quick look at it. In the embedded data fields. And again, you can create you can do the same kind of thing. But as you can see, this tiny little box is really difficult to edit, especially if it starts getting much longer. So that's a big reason why I say, do the editing in a plain text editor, Notepad or Google or whatever else you might want. We're going to look at this quite a bit more in a couple of weeks. I just want to see, and the difference between this embedded data and what we did in the actual survey is that the BMI will now be part of your downloaded data. And depending on where you calculate BMI, you can use that again later on in the survey. We haven't asked for their height and weight in this survey flow. So if you went to do it, it wouldn't calculate the BMI. Of course, it would have to be after you ask height and weight. But then if you had a long survey, this is where we calculated using regular pipe text. But as I say, this would disappear, whereas BMI is now set in the data and you can use it 20 questions later. You don't have to redo this. As I say, we'll do more of that next week. Are there any questions? I went through that kind of quick. Anything from previous weeks? Anything you're working on now that you have a question about? We have quite a bit of time left. Well, okay then. This week is always a short week, and so next week we are doing question and answer customization. Nope, that's this week. I'm looking at the wrong thing here. Question order, where we're going to talk about display logic and skip logic, randomizing responses, which can be kind of cool, and the loop and merge, which can be very useful. All right, one last chance. Any questions? Okay, then. Thank you very much, and I'll see everybody here next week.